Hi. I'm Monte Cook, currently the creative director and lead designer and co-owner of Monte Cook Games. But I've been around TTRPGs forever.
Yeah,
I've really never done anything else, to be
that's
honest.
awesome. Did
Yeah.
you in the second edition era? I know you were in third edition D&D, but yeah.
Yeah. I started at TSR in '94, so there was still quite a few years of second edition for me. I worked a
Yeah,
lot on Planescape and then just a lot of the sort of main D&D stuff.
that's awesome. Really, really cool. Well, awesome. So you started Monte Cook Games. When did that happen? Like 2010, I think, or
Yeah, it was right around 2010, 2011. We sort of started that when I did the first Kickstarter for Numenera. So that was
yeah.
the thing that kicked things off, and mostly because it did so much better than I ever dreamed. I thought, oh well, maybe we'll make a company out of this.
That's awesome. So for those people who don't know, what kind of games do you guys make?
So we make a lot of Cipher System games. That's our sort of our house system, I guess you would say. But not all of our games use the Cipher System. We also make a game called Invisible Sun. We have done some oddball things like Stealing Stories for the Devil and a few other things, Devil's Dandy Dogs. But Cipher System, again, starting with Numenera, which is where the Cipher System started, is really kind of our main focus most of the time.
And that's your in-house tabletop RPG setting that you guys are kind of expanding and doing all this interesting stuff with.
Yeah, exactly.
So with we're talking to you today, or I'm talking to you today, because there is a not a, I don't want to say a second edition, but maybe you do, but like a revised version of Cipher. Would you call it a second edition? Or
I would call it a second edition.
Okay.
Yeah. I've got some I've got some familiarity in my background with doing new editions of games, and so I'm kind of strict about what I think qualifies as a true new edition of a game and what doesn't. And I think that enough is changing here that I would call it a second edition, but it's still very much the same game. And I know that that always sounds nonsensical when a game designer says that. But I'm happy to go into more detail of why I would say that.
Yeah. So I guess for some of my audience members, what makes Cipher different from other tabletop RPGs?
So I like to think of Cipher as sort of a transition from very hardcore trad games like Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, a few other games, and things that are more on the narrative end. Fate and maybe things like that. This is like somewhere in between that spectrum. We still have a pretty firm foundation of rules, but yet we really embrace the GM's ability to help guide the story, and a lot of the mechanics are there to both help the GM and the players kind of guide the story in a more with a little bit more control and a little bit less control on the side of the rules and the dice than a traditional game.
Yeah, and so we were just talking before I started recording that I finished a Cipher game, and I found that like there was enough that my players really enjoyed the like crunchy aspects of figuring out like what does this do, but also we could just make something up and nobody really got upset about it, or I'm gonna rule it this way, and they're like okay, and it felt kind of I've also been playing a lot of OSR and old school things, and they have a similar vibe, only the Monte Cook spin on the worlds and stuff such as Numenera is not OSR-ish, but yeah, it's super fun. So
Yeah, honestly, what the Cipher system really is it's the way that I remember playing RPGs when I was having the most fun with it.
Oh.
Which is kind of, you like I said, you've got some rules and everyone knows how they work, but then you also kind of make things a little more fluid and you can you have a little bit more agency and control over what your character can do, and I have a little bit more, if I'm the GM, I have a little bit more control over where the story goes that goes beyond the rules. That's the way I played D&D way back when, in first edition. And I don't know, I have such fond memories of that. And with a group that will go along with that and enjoys that, it's just the most fun.
Yeah. Cipher evolved from Numenera. And now Cipher's getting a second edition. Is Numenera going to get updated, or is that still its own separate-ish thing?
Well, so it's not. So we're launching this game. It'll come out next year, and Numenera won't be a part of that. But it wouldn't be a foolish assumption to make that we will probably update Numenera at some point in the near future. Yeah.
Interesting. What spawned Numenera, I guess, like back in the day? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah.
Because it's such a unique world, and I know we're talking about Cipher, but I'm also a hardcore fan of Invisible Sun, and I love that world. And I always tell my friends, I'm like, I think Monte Cook's brain is just that he makes worlds that click with me. Where all of a sudden I'm like, this is the level of bizarre I was looking for that I didn't know I was looking for, kind of a thing. And so where did all that come from? I'm just curious.
So Numenera actually is the union of two different ideas that I've been sitting on for a really long time. And one is sort of the mechanics that like I had been thinking a long time about, well, what if your character could put forth more effort into a task that was more important to them than just sort of this routine thing that they're doing. And, so what if they had some kind of points or something to spend in order to, I'm going to really focus on this thing. And I've had that idea since, I don't know, college probably. But the setting for Numenera kind of goes back almost as far, and it is just that that idea, that we talk about Arthur C. Clarke's quotation a lot of, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I thought, well, what if we just take that to its logical conclusion, and you had a setting that seems like a fantasy world with magic and whatnot, but oh no, wait, actually it's technology. And it got weirder from there, but mostly I wanted to explore the idea that, there were these past civilizations, and they weren't just incredibly advanced, but they were also pretty alien to us. And so, they made a lot of stuff, and we don't necessarily understand it. We can make use of it, but what was this thing's original purpose? Don't know, right? And that kind of comes out of, there's a short novel called Roadside Picnic, which came out like in I want to say the 70s, but maybe it was the 80s, and by a pair of Russian authors. And God, I'm not going to be able to come up with their name right here on the spot.
I'll flash it on the screen. It's fine.
All right, cool. And it's basically, it takes this premise of, what if one day we woke up and there was just a bunch of alien stuff kind of left here because the aliens stopped here for a minute, kind of did whatever the alien stuff they were going to do, tossed out some trash and took off. And we never saw them. We never experienced them coming here, but they just sort of left all this stuff. And they compared it to the idea of, well, what if a bunch of humans had a roadside picnic, threw away some of their garbage, did the thing that humans do, and now a bunch of like insects come along, or animals and stuff, and they try to, what is this stuff? And they've never seen anything like it before, and they have no idea what the original purpose was, but they find uses for it. That's Numenera. Right?
You have a transwarp coil, but you're cooking eggs on it. I guess that's the way to do that. Okay, kind of a thing. Yeah. No, that's really fun. So with Cipher System Second Edition coming out, what are some changes that you've made that you're excited for, that all the people to run around with?
So the vast majority of the changes that we're making have to do with player characters, and to really get the changes, you have to go back to the very earliest iterations of the Cipher system, where I kind of designed it to be not so much a game, but like a toolbox, so that a GM could pick it up and make their own game. And so there were sort of these core types that you could then mold into whatever you wanted them to be, and add on these other pieces. And we had these things called flavors that you could change things up and make characters the way you wanted them to. And the biggest thing that we're doing here is we're making that a lot easier for people to use. You can just pick this game up and say, okay, we're going to play a fantasy game. You want to play a barbarian? Well, here's a character type called barbarian, right? And you want to play a druid? Here's one called a druid. And we're playing science fiction. You want to play a star pilot? Here's a type called star pilot. And it's just way easier to just pick this up and start a game.
Did that come out of the various genre books and settings that you came out with recently for Numenera? Because I've picked up many of those, and I think it's the God-forsaken one is the fantasy one, and that is like, use these for an elf, or use these for this. Is that kind of where that spawned from?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's, we've been trying to kind of kick around the ways to make all these, like you said, we've come out with a bunch of different books over the last 5-6 years, dealing with different genres, and it taught us a lot about how to just make things work a little bit easier and easier on the GM. We've kind of done the work for you in a lot of these ways.
Yeah, that's awesome, and people value that, I guess. Like, you have pre-written adventures and things like that, so there's there's a community out there that really loves that they can just sit down and play. So
yeah, and there's still plenty to tinker with. If there are people out there who loved the Cipher system because it was just this toolbox of stuff to play around with, there's still a lot to play around with.
Yeah, that's fun. My favorite of the new settings books that you came out with was It's Only Magic, and it allowed me to run a game where I grabbed my friends and I said, okay, you're you-ish, and we're in the city we live in, but the arcane magical authority police have enlisted you because you have special powers and you have to stop a bunch of witches from taking over this town. And I've had, it took us a couple of sessions to kind of figure it out, myself as running it for the first time, and them also being like, okay, this isn't a traditional, or not traditional, but this isn't Dungeons and Dragons. Right. But I will say, like, once it clicked, and everybody bought in so hard, and we still talk about it. Like, we finished it up and they were like, that was awesome. And I was like, I know, it was really fun. And I was like, and I've got all these other setting books, we need to jump in. So I'm excited for the tinkering and the building of new things. And I do enjoy the character building aspect. I guess I'm just fanboying now, but yeah.
When that book was in process, I remember we started to develop the rules and guidelines for characters who can drive magical cars.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, okay, we've got something cool here.
Yeah. One of my players wanted to be a ghost, and nice. That was in the book. Like, it was like, oh, what's one of these things I can do? And it came in so clutch so many times, and it was really interesting and fun to be like, well, can I don't know, do I get an extra advantage or something because I'm invisible? Like, can I ghost through a wall? So I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Let's do that. That cool. Yes, and making it work is really fun. Fantastic. So speaking of those books, they just came out. You have all of these really great settings like Rest and Redemption and stuff. Are they going to work still with existing Cipher?
Yeah, that kind of gets into the whole something that I said a while back, which is, it's still the same game. Because one of the things that is true of Cipher is that On the sort of on the player side and on the GM side, the rules are actually quite different, right? Rules are not the same for the NPCs rules than for the PCs. The PCs are much more lots more moving parts and things like that. The GM, because this comes from the game designer being a forever GM, right? It's very easy to run this game, and you just the NPCs sometimes just have one number associated with them, and that's it. And none of that is changing. None of that stuff that's sort of behind the GM screen, so to speak, is changing. So all the settings, all the adventures, all of that stuff, 100% usable within Second Edition.
That's awesome. With and then I assume ciphers, the magic items and what have you. Same thing, huh?
Same thing.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's great because there's so much like tinkering there. It's really, really, really fun.
Cool.
What do you love about the Cipher system? Like I know that's kind of a weird thing because you designed it and stuff, but you obviously play it, I'm assuming, like, and you're building games and campaigns and stuff. What is it that really draws you, I guess, to this game?
I think that it is something that I mentioned earlier, right? It's the, again, on both sides of the GM screen. Not that I actually use a GM screen, but I'm using that's my visual metaphor here.
The proverbial,
yes, proverbial GM screen. Is there are rules to break the rules. On the GM side, you've got the GM intrusion, which is just, hey, here's a challenge, here's a difficulty that I'm going to give to this player or the entire group of players that makes things more interesting. It's not there to screw anybody over, but it's that moment when you're watching Tom Cruise and he's climbing up a rope in an action movie, right? And then suddenly the rope starts to fray because it's rubbing on something sharp, right? That doesn't happen in RPGs, but it happens in Cipher, right? Because the GM uses a GM intrusion and says that happens, but you get more experience points for it, right? So it's not just a hose job. But
you're not punishing your players. You're saying
exactly.
You'll get a treat, but we're gonna make this more interesting. So that's how I pitched it to my players. I'm like, you get ice cream afterwards, but right now.
Right. That's exactly right. And then, so the GM has this power to kind of, like you just said, make things more interesting. And I've always been frustrated when I'm playing a game that isn't Cipher, or before I created Cipher, because there would be things like, oh, what would be really interesting is if this happened. And then the next question is, oh, but would I be cheating to just have that happen, right? Can I make that happen within the framework of these rules? And will the group accept it? And is it going to feel right? And Cipher gives you the ability to just do that. It's part of the rules. And then at the same time, the players have player intrusions, right? Which are fun, right? You're like, hey, this NPC that we have to go meet, I've actually met him before. And he's an old pal of mine or whatever, right? But I think much more prevalent is the idea that I can use my stats, I can use effort, because this is really, really important to me. And so I'm gonna put a bunch of points into this and really try to get this taken care of, because this is clutch. And again, that's one of those things that when I'm not playing Cipher, I really miss in other games. Because when it just all comes down to a die roll, maybe you get lucky.
Like, I want to sacrifice everything to make sure that it can work. Exactly. Give me a mechanic that lets me do that. And yeah, that's really fun. I've been reading your Substack articles, and you have a bunch of design diary blog posts on your website as well, on montecookgames.com.
Right.
Giving insights into the Cipher system. So I'll link those down below if people are interested, because they are interesting. Cool. And I thought it was, I personally really like that you have, you take damage on your strength and your speed and your actual stats. Like I thought that was a fun, I don't know, it made it very different for me. And I did read one of your articles that you're going to go to like basically like wound boxes or something for players. Is that just a simplification? Is there, I don't know, like, can you expand on that? Like the idea behind adding basically hit points, I guess, when you didn't have them before.
It's interesting. And it's interesting that you use that example, because one of the most prevalent bits of feedback that I've gotten over the years of people who tried Cypher, like I'll be honest, if you haven't actually tried a game and you're voicing an opinion, I don't really care.
You got to play it, yeah.
But if you've tried Cypher and you just couldn't get into it, or you tried with your group and your group just couldn't get into it, like the most common feedback is everyone was afraid to spend any of their points from their stats, because that was their hit points.
Yeah, that was their health.
They didn't want to jeopardize their hit points. Now, I'm not gonna validate that opinion entirely, because that isn't really technically true. And it works so much differently than, say, a D&D hit points. But what I was really interested in doing, if we were going to explore some other way of doing that, is something that we could vary based on genre. And so if you're playing in one genre or another, to use the term that you mentioned, right, the sort of wound boxes, right, you've got more or less, and you recover them faster or slower. But if you're watching Die Hard, right, Bruce Willis falls down 3 floors in the building and
cuts his foot and bleeds a whole bunch, walks around, knocks, but he's fine in the next scene, or fine-ish.
Fine. Right, exactly. Which is different from when Conan is fighting a horde of dudes, and he's getting sliced and whatnot, and he just keeps going, versus some elderly professor in some kind of Cthulhu horror kind of setting who trips and falls once running away from the monsters, and he's can't even get back. Right, there's genre so dictates how the main characters can get hurt or not. And so the new wound system allows us to play around with that in a very interesting way. And the secret is that it's still kind of based on your stat pools, because when you take wounds, you can then take your might pool, which is what used to sort of be the main thing that took damage, and spend points out of your might pool and negate some of the wounds that you've taken. Okay. So it's still coming off of your pool, but again, it gives you a little bit more agency as a player of like, no, I'm going to suffer the effects of this wound so that I still have points to spend to do
the cool ability that I want to do. Yeah,
exactly.
To save people. So to put it in, I like to rephrase it just to make sure I understand it. So like if you're in a Western and you get hit by a gun, I could say, instead of actually taking that bullet, I'm going to make myself a little exhausted by spending like 5 of speed. And then I'm exhausted. I can't go as fast as I used to, or I can't spend speed, but I didn't take that hit. So
it would be might. But but yeah, basically you can basically you're like, okay, that shot wasn't as bad as I thought. It was just a scrape, right? And I spend some points and it slows me down a little bit, but I'm still okay. But if I don't spend those points, well, then maybe my actions are hindered now because I'm walking with a limp.
And Cipher System's really generic. Are there any settings coming out with this second edition, or is it going to be kind of like the Cipher book that was released earlier, the nice red one, where it's like, here's the base game?
It's more of that.
Okay.
We're doing a crowdfunding campaign, and it's possible that there might be some stretch goals, and it's possible that I'll just say it's possible that there are some settings that we did for Cypher quite some time ago now that people have been asking for and clamoring for, and
Oh.
we would love to have the possibility of bringing some of those back before we got into anything new. We want to do new things too, though.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love, like I said, the worlds that you make and stuff. I did Plane Breaker. I ran that as well. That was a lot of fun. And
Cool.
so,
Yeah,
and I have Tolus on my countertop, but I have not had a chance to fully read through it. But yeah, super excited. So before, well, I should ask you, when is this crowdfunding going up and where specifically? And I'll put links down below if you have them. But
fantastic, yeah. So the backer kit campaign launches on Tuesday.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we'd love to have people go check that out. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's awesome. And then I wanted to pick your brain a little bit before we have to go about Invisible Sun, because it's this amazing game that is haunting almost. And I've ran it for some friends online, and they were like, I don't think it's the game for me. And I'm like, that's okay. And but when you find those people that it really connects with them, and it's super fun. And so I have another group that are slowly becoming interested in it, and we might pick up a physical game here, which will be fun to use the physical props and stuff that I have not had a chance to use.
It really shines as an in-person game, I gotta say. Yeah.
I'm just convinced I love online. I love that people can play online, but I am a at the table kind of person. I wanna see my friends and roll physical dice and stuff. That game, I guess I don't really know what to ask you about it other than like the worlds that you've created and the stories. I think with the direction of the latest Kickstarter, you're actually planning on doing some more. Well, the Wellspring, I should say, had mini adventures to run. Like, here's the bare bones of a thing, which I found very helpful, because a lot of times you read through the book and you're just kind of like overwhelmed with the setting. You're like, I'm not sure how to actually place a game in here. Are you thinking of doing any more like pre-written adventures, so to speak, for Invisible Sun?
Yeah, I would love to see something, but what I'd love to see is a published product that guides you through the way an Invisible Sun campaign, which we sometimes call a narrative, how that actually goes. Because it's, when you actually play the game, it's less like discrete adventures and more like, okay, I'm gonna see what where do the players want to go, and you know, they kind of know about all these different options, and we've got all these things to spin out of their backgrounds, but it's very driven by what the players want to do. And then once they kind of communicate that to the DM, which is all part of the first session of Invisible Sun, then the ball gets rolling, and they can start investigating stuff and looking into things and learning things. But you know, sometimes, you know, a session or two sessions will be just about hey, there's this magical secret that I want to learn, and in order to learn it, I have to go find this person and talk to them and convince them to teach me. And oh, but there's another, you know, there's these challenges in the way. And it is not a traditional game in the sense of, okay, so here's this guy, he meets you in a tavern, he wants to give you 100 gold pieces if you go do this thing for him. You know, it's not that kind of a setting. A game. And so writing adventures for that game is really challenging. I actually kind of even inwardly bristle at even the word adventure when it comes to Invisible Sun, because it's so player driven. But you know, a product, I can envision a product where we kind of give you a number of different options, and then the players can choose which thing they are most interested in, and then it kind of takes you off down this path, and then the options that they didn't take, we can kind of weave back into things, so there isn't a lot of wasted material and whatnot. It would be challenging, but I feel like we're up to the challenge.
So is the ideal narrative, like, game master for Invisible Sun just a master improver? Like, is that what you're thinking? Like, you absorb all this information and then your players are like, and we're going to the moon, and you're like, and we're gonna make that happen.
You know, it's some good improv skills. Well, you know,
or is it more of a thank you for letting me know your direction, and then part of the fun of the game, as you're intending, is to go home and research how can I make this happen? And
that's really kind of the thing. There's a lot in the main Invisible Sun books that, you know, kind of help you with, okay, so your players want to do this. Well, you know, here's a couple of the places where they could go, or, you know, that kind of thing. And I mean, that whole first session is set up so that at the end of the session, the players kind of say, okay, this is what we're interested in, getting more power. We're interested in learning some secret. We're in, you know, and then the GM gets to go off, you know, and have the week or 2 weeks or however often you play to come up with something that then sort of meets that need that the players have expressed. But I'm not gonna lie, like, having some good improv skills is going to be really useful in a game like Invisible Sun. But, you know, I am of the opinion that that's kind of true just of being a GM in practically any game.
Yeah.
You know, the players are always going to go off in a direction you weren't planning on, and you've always got to be ready with something, right? And so it's maybe more true in Invisible Sun, but I sure improv'd my way through a lot of D&D in my time.
Yeah. Well, no, and I think, and I'm wondering, maybe it's just the personal challenge that I have, is that it's such a non-traditional world that when I am faced with, like, well, I want to go check out this house that's actually a mushroom, and I'm like, oh, okay, like, I casually said that, and now they're interested in it, and I'm like, hey, how do I, you know? And so it's one of those. But as somebody who's ran games for many years, it's a new challenge that I love. Like, I remember, like, I guess that all of a sudden I'm in the hot seat and I got to figure out how we take care of this mushroom house, Jordan. Like, what are you doing? But it's
well,
good. It's interesting.
You know what I think? I think that you've just described kind of why science fiction games are sometimes, for me anyway, a much bigger challenge than a fantasy game, because you kind of, you know, if you're going to just say, oh, there's this weird house, or, you know, there's this space station and you hear weird stuff, you know, it's got to be sort of grounded in some kind of reality, some kind of, you know, oh, that's the way this technology works or whatever. But in a setting like Invisible Sun, while it is true that they might be doing a lot of improv, you can improv anything, right? I mean, the key word in Invisible Sun is surreality, right? And so you can make it as weird and dreamlike as need be. Like, you can have that mushroom house be, you know, a psychedelic mushroom that everything goes in there, and
you can't enter until you eat the mushroom, and a week later we'll see what happened. And so
perfect, right? You don't enter the house enters you.
Oh gosh, that would be amazing. Okay, I'm writing a new campaign tonight, or a narrative. Monte Cook, thank you so much. I'm excited. I'm really hopeful for the Kickstarter. I'm a big fan of Monte Cook games in general, and of you. And this was a delight to chat with you. So everybody at home, make sure you check out Cipher Second Edition, coming out probably before this video is up, but the video will be up during the Kickstarter process. So be sure to check it out.
Yeah, please come by.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.